But what happens when all of a sudden you go and you own the things you see in others? I've said in my Breakthrough Experience program, which I've taught 1,000 many times, over 1,100 and some times, I've shared that at the level of the soul, the state of unconditional love, where there's no judgment, nothing's missing in you. You're not too proud. You're not too humble to admit what you see in others inside yourself. That is the essential self. That is the essence of your being, or some call it the ground of being. That is where you are not reactive, but you're active. You're inspired. When you live by your highest values and you're most objective, you're most likely to access that state. That's why our identity revolves around what we value most in our life. And whenever we live by highest priority, we automatically awaken it. But in the Breakthrough Experience, I have people that are resenting people, infatuating with people, exaggerating and minimizing themselves, and trying to be loved for who they are when they're not even willing to be who they are. So when you're exaggerating yourself, you're not willing to be who you are. When you're minimizing yourself, you're not who you are. How are you expecting somebody to love you for who you are when you're not even willing to be it? It's only in a state of grace, only in a state of inspiration, only in the state of real love, where you really have the balanced state, where you're reflective, and you own your hero and your villain. You own those things on the pedestal in the pit, and you don't try to deny any of them. You're not too proud or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you, where you have reflective awareness, where the essential self emerges, and the integration of your personas and personal development are integrated, which is what the brain is attempting to do, to bring us to our highest value, where we're objective, where things are balanced and we're not judging. Only there do we have the essential self. And only there do we empower ourselves. That's why in the Breakthrough Experience, I want people to do the Demartini method. Because the Demartini method, which is a series of questions to enlighten you and to help you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos, makes you go and look at what specific trait, action, inaction do I perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating that I admire most or despise most? And I identify what those traits, actions, and inactions are that I'm judging. Then I go to a moment where and when I perceive myself displaying or demonstrating the same or similar specific traits, action, inactions that I perceive in them inside me. And I look carefully and I look for them and identify where it was, when it was, who it was to, and who perceived me doing it, until the quantity and the quality of it match what would I see in these other people. And I own those traits of the hero and the villain. And when I realize that I'm the hero and the villain, and that I'm not nice without mean, or mean without nice, or kind without cruel, or cruel without kind, I have every trait, and I need every trait in order to function. I don't need to get rid of half of myself to love myself. I'm both sides. The truth of your nature is that you're both. And the fantasy is you're going to get rid of half of yourself and be only one-sided. That is the biggest farce, the biggest futility, the biggest fantasy that is promoted on this planet, morally leading to hypocrisies that keep people trapped and disempowered, striving for that which is unavailable, and creating these polarities of judgment which embondage us. So when we go in there and identify where we've done it to the same degree and own the traits of these people that we see above us and below us, and have reflective awareness where the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same, all of a sudden our judgments calm down. And then the traits that we admire, we go in there and go to a moment where and when you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating the specific trait, action, inaction you admire. And in that moment, and from that moment till now, how is it a drawback? How is it a disservice? What's the downsides? Because if you're blind to the downsides, it's time to intuitively ask the question, what are they? Otherwise, you'll be blind by an infatuation and then eventually discover the downsides, broadsided by it. Better to be aware now. Why not have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process instead of the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? And then go to the moment where and when you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating a specific trait, action, inaction you despise or resent. At that moment, and from that moment till now, the present, how specifically was an upside? What was the benefit? What was the advantages that it offered? And be accountable, which means bring your mind into a balance. Be accountable to see both sides of an event. All events are neutral until somebody judges them with a skewed subjective bias and doesn't see the whole. How are you going to have mindfulness if you're trying to empty your mind of half of the content? by being subjectively biased with an opinion that's stored by wounds of the past. And it's wise to ask the questions, to equilibrate the mind, to liberate the mind, to balance the mind, because you can't have a balanced physiology without a balanced mentality. And this is what the neurotransmitters are showing. Our actions are going to be a byproduct of our perceptions. We balance our perceptions, we have more moderate actions. If not, we have extreme volatilities and perturbations in our perceptions and actions. So the moment we own those, the moment we neutralize those, and then we go to the moment when we displayed it and go find out the upsides or downsides of those and balance those out. So we dissolve our pride and shame. When we dissolve our pride and shame and dissolve our infatuation, resentment, we access our authentic self. And then if we go to a moment when we perceive these individuals displaying those traits, the opposite traits to what they displayed, to whoever they were displaying it to, we take away the labels that make us rigid in our perceptions of them and allow them to be just human beings with sets of values, and they respond to their perceptions. And sometimes they'll be nice and sometimes mean and sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. And when we understand that, we understand they're a human being with a set of values that we can honor and respect and communicate in. And then we realize that there's no reason to judge that individual, and there's no reason to judge ourselves in turn. Then we go and find out whenever they did, we find out who is doing the opposite and balance the equation, which then helps us transcend the labels and transcend the judgment. And then we crack the fantasy about how we expected them to be when we resent them, or the nightmare of how we would not want them to be when we're infatuated with them. And we crack those by asking what's the downside or the upside of the opposite behavior. And once we do, we realize that this individual has nothing except something to be loved. This individual is just a human being with a set of values, living congruently with their values, but we, with our subjective biases, didn't see it. And when we do, we did not live authentically. And then we projected onto them an expectation based on that. And we create unrealistic expectations on them to live in our values or us to live in their values. And this disempowers us. This creates a facade, a persona, a mask that covers up our authentic self. The essential self, the existing, absolute, fundamental, universal, authentic self is truly empowered, has nothing missing, owns all the traits, doesn't waste its time trying to get rid of half of itself, doesn't waste its time trying to get rid of half of anybody else's stuff. They get on with priority. And we're not here to compare ourselves to others. We're here to compare our daily actions to our own dreams, our own highest priority actions. If we identify what's really highest in our values, stick to the action steps that we found that are most effective in fulfilling them, stick to those, we're less judging. We all know that when we do high priority actions in a day, we're more resilient, more adaptable, more expanded, more inspired, more fulfilled, more leader-oriented, more walking our talk, and we end up having more resilience and adaptability when we come home. We don't react to people, and we know how to handle situations because we're living in our executive center, our forebrain, instead of our hindbrain. In the Breakthrough Experience program that I teach, as I said, almost every week or so, I help people with the Demartini method help attain essential self, the authentic self. Everybody wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are. If they had only 24 hours to live, they would go and love and appreciate people that have contributed to their lives. You're not going to love and appreciate yourself when you're proud or shamed. You're not going to love and appreciate other people when you're infatuated or resentful. You're only going to love and appreciate you and others when you're reflective and you're authentic and you've transcended your personas. Again, personal development is the integration of the personas into the true self.